introduce yourself, because I see a lot of these companies that you led, and so give us a brief introduction of yourself as an entrepreneur and background.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a native of West Texas, and I raised my family here in San Antonio. So I'm actually a lawyer by training, right? And I practiced law for about 15 years here in San Antonio. And most of my practice was representing biotech companies and pharma companies in federal court or before the Food and Drug Administration. At the same time, the other part of my client base were physicians, right? And so I have a couple of former clients in the community. And so how I got involved in this industry is actually a client of mine, surgical oncologist and actually a drug developer himself, asked me to start Cancer Insight. And Cancer Insight is a drug development company. And I never envisioned myself being an entrepreneur. In a sense, as a lawyer, you are an entrepreneur. But I never envisioned starting biotech companies. But it's been a wonderful industry. And over the years, I've had the privilege of networking with physician entrepreneurs. And I have the highest respect for you all. I have the highest respect for physicians. But when you have the combination of a physician or a PhD scientist or an innovator who goes into the health tech space, I think it's just a wonderful field, right? And at the same time, some of the presenters showed us earlier, and we all know, the field has just got great potential, right? We are on the cusp of a revolution, whether it's AI, revolution of new drugs. There's so much opportunity to do good and to make a lot of money at the same time. And also, I've had the benefit of traveling. I'm a former Army officer. I've been an international exchange student, and I've traveled the world. The opportunity with technology to bring healthcare to so many parts of the world, I think, is fascinating as well. So you asked about SOAP, right?
Right, yes.
So I'm the only non-physician, I think, who's the chapter president of SOAP. My partner and I, Dr. George Peoples, are the San Antonio chapter presidents of SOAP. It's not a very active organization, quite frankly. However, Jeff Hosfield introduced me.
That's what who introduced me to that. So
yeah. So, but there are a number of organizations in Texas, in particular, and I can only really talk intelligently about Texas, that are set up, like the two earlier presenters talked about, the organizations around UT Austin. But I've been in Houston the past few days. I'm a little bit tired because I just got back in from Houston. But there are a number of organizations that are providing opportunities for physician scientists in Houston in particular, and also in Dallas, to give them money, give them opportunities, to put them in touch with venture capitalists so they can commercialize the technologies that they're developing, both in their practice, but also some of those physicians that are in the academic world as well.
Right. So basically, I think we have not a lot of time left, but a few of the questions that people have in mind, and if you can summarize most of them in one answer so that we can wrap it up, is that how do you identify initially, early on, how to validate an idea and whether it will be commercial commercial scaling after the idea is there?
Yeah, I think commercializing medical product is a team sport, and I think the first thing, because I teach this at MD Anderson, is you've got to have a market opportunity, right? I work a lot with the physician scientists at MD Anderson in particular, and they're doing incredible science, but oftentimes that science does not translate into a commercial product. So you really need to think long and hard. Is it a commercial product? How much money is it going to take to get to the marketplace? And is it a crowded landscape where you're just going to have too much competition?
And when you register, is there a formula or preferred, where do you incorporate your startup?
Well, that's a complicated answer, and I'll be here at the dinner as well, so I'd love to have a discussion. But It's very easy to do a limited liability company if you're in Texas or your home jurisdiction. That's the easiest thing to do. However, if you are going to take on certainly institutional capital, like venture capital, then the go-to standard in the United States is to incorporate in Delaware. That makes it easiest for institutional investors. I've got some scar tissue. I've learned the hard way on that.
Finally, I would say that you spend a couple of minutes on how to advise physicians to get involved, because we have a barrier. We think of ourselves as patient care, clinical clinicians, and I think we have a psychological barrier and logistical, of course, followed by that, to jump into this space of entrepreneurship and innovation. So what advice or insight do you have for them to cross that barrier and come into this space?
Yeah, I think because of my prior legal practice and having represented so many physician entrepreneurs, I do have a unique perspective. And I know, at least in the States, that the practice of medicine is not getting easier, right? Compensation is not going up like it used to. And it's harder to have your own practice, right? Physicians are becoming more and more employees of large organizations, and I think there's a lot of burnout. That's been my observation, okay? So I think entrepreneurship is an outlet, but you got to be careful. Now, I became an entrepreneur because if I failed, I could go back to a very lucrative law practice. Same thing with my business partner. If our first company, Cancer Insight, had failed, he could go back to being a surgical oncologist. So we had that fallback. But to answer your question, I would say, especially in Texas, there are a number of organizations at universities or nonprofits that are there to support innovators, right? I can tell you in Texas, there's a huge thirst to commercialize medical technologies in the state of Texas. The state itself and universities have put a lot of resources and money on the table to help innovators develop. So bottom line is, there's support out there, and I would tap into all the resources that exist in your local community.
Great, thank you, Dan. And
Sure.
Dan will be available, like he said, after this and even at dinner. So please reach out to him for any questions that come as an afterthought. Thank you.